So, the 1960s, a decade packed with historic moments. But we're not here to talk about the assassinations of JFK or MLK, the moon landing, or the Vietnam War. Nope, we're only in it for the music. And man, oh man, did the 60s deliver an endless stream of unforgettable sounds. Plenty of greatness to sink our teeth into. Let's dive right in. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of We're Only in It for the Music, a brand new YouTube series that takes you on a musical journey through videos about pop, rock, jazz, blues, soul, and funk. In other words, from ABBA to Zappa and everything in between. If you're enjoying this series, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll always be the first to know when a new episode drops. But enough of that. Never mind the bollocks, we're only in it for the music. Welcome to the very first episode of 10 Essentials, where, as the title helpfully suggests, we line up 10 essential examples of, well, just about anything. Albums, individual songs, artists, record labels, recording studios, you name it. The possibilities are endless. Since this is the kickoff episode of the 10 Essentials series, we're starting with a fitting theme. Every musical journey has a beginning, and so we're opening this series with 10 essential debut albums from the 1960s, the decade in which pop music truly came of age. Now, if you had to name one debut album that had the greatest historical impact, chances are you'd land on Elvis Presley's self-titled debut. But that was released way back in 1956, so it doesn't qualify for this particular list. Still, we've mentioned the king, and that's always a good thing. As I started putting together candidates for this 10 Essentials list, it quickly became clear. The years 1960 to 1969 gave us so many incredible debut albums that narrowing it down to just 10 is almost impossible. You'd have to leave out too many iconic, essential records, and a list full of honorable mentions, longer than the 10 Essentials list, would kind of miss the point. So, I came up with a plan. I organized all the debut albums chronologically, and from that list, I selected 10 albums at a time to be ranked, just like you might have seen in the album ranking episode. Each song is graded on a scale from 0 to 10, and each album can earn bonus points for its sound, chart production, sequencing, and sleeve design, the so-called Triple S system. This rating method was applied to 10 debut albums released between 1960 and 1965, which gives us our part 1 of the series. Once we've worked our way through the 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, we'll circle back to the 60s for part 2. That way, all these amazing records will get their moment. All right, enough housekeeping. Let's get started. We kick off this list with a band the world first met in 1962. A group of fresh-faced kids singing sunny surf songs about summer, the ocean, the beach, and girls. While the Beach Boys would go on to become one of the most successful and groundbreaking bands of the 60s, you don't really hear too much of that future brilliance yet on this debut album.
Do you even like the Beach Boys?
They have beach right in the name. What do you think?
Sure, the title track is insanely catchy, and it's fun to hear the Beach Boys' own take on summertime blues, but it would take a few more steps and albums before the band moved closer to pop perfection. Still, Surfin' Safari was an instant commercial success back in 1962. A new phenomenon was born, and it's genuinely entertaining to go back and hear where it all started. Bonus points here go to the iconic album cover, which perfectly established the Beach Boys' image in one go. For that reason alone, this debut earns its place as an essential release. The debut album of brothers Ray and Dave Davies features an instant classic in You Really Got Me. A song so powerful and iconic, this track alone justifies the album's place on this list. But honestly, that one track towers so high above the rest that most of the other songs struggle to leave the same impression. As with the Beach Boys, this debut isn't necessarily the band's best album. Not by a long shot. But in 1964, it did firmly put the Kinks on the map. Edgy, sharp-witted, and ridiculously catchy, The band would go on to craft plenty of timeless material in the years to come. But it all started right here. Interestingly, in the US, the album was renamed after its hit single, You Really Got Me, and released with different cover art. The early days of the Kinks land in this 10 Essentials list at number 9.
Number 9. Number 9.
Landing at number 8 is another album from 1964. The first one by New York folk duo Simon and Garfunkel.
Ladies and gentlemen, Simon and Garfunkel.
Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. features the original acoustic version of The Sound of Silence, the very song that 1 year later, in a newly electrified arrangement, would become the duo's big breakthrough. Aside from that timeless classic, the album offers other beautiful tracks like Bleecker Street, as well as a cover of Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin'. Paul Simon's songwriting, still in its early stages here, would grow into something truly extraordinary in the years that followed. But even on this debut, the crystal-clear two-part harmonies inspired by the Everly Brothers are already front and center. The album title and cover still hold a quiet, intriguing charm. A beautiful start to a short but truly remarkable body of work from these two school friends from Queens, New York.
Audience. Ladies and gentlemen, here are 4 of the nicest youngsters we've ever had on our stage. The Beatles! Bring them on!
At number 7, we find the Fab Four from Liverpool. Few musical phenomena have ever exploded with the kind of intensity that surrounded the Beatles. Their debut album, Please Please Me, was famously recorded in just one day. On February 11, 1963, these 4 lads managed to lay down their first full-length album in just 13 hours at the EMI Studios in London, a place that would only later become known as Abbey Road Studios. Thanks to that now iconic album, the record delivers an infectious mix of catchy originals and rock and roll and R&B covers, capturing the raw energy that would soon spark the global Beatlemania frenzy. It's truly impressive to hear how this young band already managed to blend pop and Mersey beats so effectively on their very first album. In my humble opinion, there's no Beatles album that's entirely flawless. Even their later work often includes a clunker or two, usually sung by Ringo, and more often than not written by McCartney. But while Please Please Me may not be their greatest album, it's arguably one of their most consistent, which is quite an achievement for such a young group. In the US, Please Please Me, like many of the Beatles' early records, was released in a completely different version, with a different cover and track list. At first, it came out on the VJ label, with fewer songs than the original UK edition. Later, Capitol Records released Meet the Beatles, which is often considered their official US debut. While the track list differs significantly from Please Please Me, it's a very solid album. Maybe even stronger, front to back. But we'll dig into the differences between UK and US releases in a future episode. For now, we're sticking with the original UK version, in mono, of course. Taking the number 6 spot is none other than Columbia Records' most successful recording artist, Mr. Bob Dylan. Although at the time of this debut, the then 20-year-old Robert Allen Zimmerman hadn't exactly earned that title yet. That title would come much later, as the official announcement at his never-ending tour concerts, a tour the now 84-year-old Dylan is still on to this day. For a long time, I wrongly dismissed this album as a somewhat shaky start, mostly because his second album, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, is just so strong. But that's more of a compliment to Freewheelin' than a critique of this debut. Yes, the arrangements and production are bare bones, almost Spartan, but there's a real urgency and presence in the way Dylan delivers both his own songs and traditional folk material. The highlight here is Song to Woody, a beautifully understated tribute to his hero, Woody Guthrie. But the album also offers plenty of other gems, like Highway 51 and In My Time of Dying. Once again, we're hearing the starting point of a musical journey that would go on to produce some of the most timeless music of the 20th century. You're doing great, Bob.
We're the one to make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. Oh, I can do that. That's a little high for me.
It sure sounded great though, Bob.
1 year after the Beatles, the Rolling Stones released their debut album. Originally self-titled in the UK, the record was renamed England's Newest Hitmakers for the American market, and it included the brilliant Not Fade Away, written by Buddy Holly. That addition definitely helped lift the album's final score in this ranking list. Of course, Route 66 and Carol, although both covers, have also become true early Stones classics. But it's the irresistible Bo Diddley rhythm of Not Fade Away that really stands out. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, wait, the Beatles and the Stones already showed up? What on earth could possibly top them in this list? Well, hold on tight, because some truly surprising picks are still coming your way. Number 4 goes to the Stax House Band Booker T and the MGs from Memphis, Tennessee. Green Onions is the instrumental title track that Booker T. Jones and his band played between recording sessions, and which was eventually released as a single. As this grooving song instantly became a soul classic, Stax Records decided to quickly release a full album packed with instrumental covers of R&B songs like I Got a Woman, made famous by Ray Charles, and the follow-up to Green Onions, aptly titled Mo Onions, a sort of Green Onions 2.0. What makes the Stax album irresistible is especially the sound. And although the MGs deliver superb performances throughout, it's Jones's organ that is the undeniable star of this 1962 debut. We're soaring into the top 3 with a true folk rock classic, Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds, released in 1965. Folk music, but with electric guitars. Just don't tell that to the folks at the Newport Folk Festival. When Dylan went electric there, it was considered scandalous. In fact, during a later concert in England, he was famously called Judas.
I don't believe you. You're a liar.
But by the following year, tempers had seemingly cooled, and the Byrds, led by Roger McGuinn and then mustacheless David Crosby, scored several hits with their renditions of Dylan songs, delivered on McGuinn's signature 12-string Rickenbacker guitar. The title track, Feel a Whole Lot Better, and Chimes of Freedom Flashing remain brilliant songs even 60 years later, and the warm vocal harmonies are still a delight to the ear. In the years that followed, the Byrds would prove they could more than hold their own without Dylan covers, penning plenty of classics of their own. They also became hugely influential on the entire West Coast sound of the 1970s, paving the way for bands like Fleetwood Mac during their Rumors era, and the Eagles.
And I hate the fucking Eagles, man.
This album marks a starting point that shows the Byrds took flight from the very beginning. At number 2, we find the oldest release on this list, At Last by Etta James from 1960. What an album! What a voice! The title track alone makes this record an absolute must-have.
At last. Hey! You were right.
My love has come along.
Etta's soulful voice is nothing short of sensational. The Rolling Stones covered I Just Want to Make Love to You on their debut album, but Etta James's version still stands as the definitive one. Even renditions by the song's original writer, blues pioneer Willie Dixon, pale somewhat in comparison to hers. At Last reveals many faces. At times warm and seductive with lush string arrangements, at other times utterly heartbreaking, driven by the raw power of Etta's voice. The 1960s would go on to produce many extraordinary female vocalists, and while Etta is sometimes unjustly overlooked, her debut proved beyond doubt that she was one of the greatest singers to ever grace the stage. And now, at number 1 in this first episode of 10 Essentials, a truly controversial choice. King of the Delta Blues Singers by Robert Johnson, released in 1961. It's a remarkable pick for several reasons. First, the original recordings were made back in 1936 and 1937 and were only sporadically released on 10-inch 78 REPM records. Second, the album itself was released posthumously in 1961, decades after Johnson's death on August 16, 1938, making him the founding member of the Club of 27. And third, One could technically consider this a compilation of those early sessions, rather than a debut album. All true, and yet Johnson rightfully claims the top spot on this list. Before 1961, very few people had heard of this mysterious bluesman, who, according to legend, sold his soul to the devil in exchange for his unmatched guitar skills and haunting voice. King of the Delta Blues Singers was, for many, the very first introduction to this deeply influential musician. Blues pioneers like Eric Clapton and Johnny Winter were early champions of Johnson's legacy, honoring him with their own interpretations of his small yet powerful body of work. Later, rock bands like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Cream, Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, and even the White Stripes would dive into Johnson's material, helping to keep his legacy alive. Johnson recorded only 29 songs across 2 sessions. 16 of them appear on the so-called debut. Willie Dixon once said, "The blues is the roots, everything else is the fruits." And that couldn't be more accurate. Every debut album mentioned earlier in this list can be traced back to the blues. That's why, in this first edition of 10 Essential 1960s Debut Albums, Robert Johnson takes the top spot. With songs like Crossroad Blues, Come On in My Kitchen, Walking Blues, Stones in My Passway, Rambling on My Mind, Me and the Devil Blues, and Hellhound on My Trail, the album is packed with nothing but killers. It may not score high in terms of sound quality. The heavy surface noise is audible throughout, but that only adds to the album's raw, authentic charm. Even in 1961, it was already music from another time, another world. And now, 88 years later, the songs on King of the Delta Blues Singers have lost none of its power. Listening to it feels like returning to the very source of all popular music. Yes, there were bluesmen before Johnson who paved the way. But with just 29 recordings, Johnson distilled the very essence of the blues. A surprising choice? Perhaps. A controversial one? Undoubtedly, but in my view, a completely justified number 1. And that was the first installment of 10 Essential 1960s Debut Albums. As mentioned, many more parts will follow, because only then can we cover as much amazing music from this decade as possible. Looking at this list, how would you rank these albums? What does your list of 10 essential debut albums look like? What's your ultimate 1960s debut record? Leave a comment below and check out the full Spotify playlist for this series via the link in the description. Next time, I'll be selecting 10 essential debut albums from the 1970s, so make sure to follow this channel to catch that episode too. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time, and in the meantime, drop the needle, press play, and remember, we're only in it for the music.